Trust me, it's all gonna be just fine. Hello world, my name is Matt Spa, and I'm a photographer and video producer in Atlanta, Georgia. For the past year, I have been trying to kind of catalog the landscape that my wife has so beautifully cultivated here. She knows how to pick out stuff and where to put it and how to tend it, and I know how to dig big holes to put things in, and so we make a pretty good team. And what I wanted was really high quality footage of our landscape here throughout the year. But I had a problem, and the problem was I'd never seemed to have a camera with me ready when the cool thing happened. Oh, airplane. There it is. When I would walk out the door at 7:32 in the morning and I saw the sun hitting a big spider web in the yard, by the time I went and got a camera out of a rig or pulled it out of its case or got everything put together and went out there to get that footage, the sun had moved and it was no longer hitting that spider web. And I got really frustrated with that. So I started looking for ways to put together what I'm calling a quick rig. And the quick rig had to be really portable. It had to work on a tripod or handheld, and it had to just be ready to go all the time. I needed two components to make it happen. I needed a lens with a really long zoom range, and I needed a tripod that was small and lightweight, but would also give me some flexibility when I needed to get different kinds of shots. So I tried a bunch of different stuff, and in this video, what I'm gonna do is go over the components that I've selected. I'll talk about the trade-offs that I made for each one of those and why, and I'll show you a bunch of footage that I've been able to shoot with what I'm calling the quick rig. I had every intention of filming each segment of this outside. I'd even shot test footage all around the property, but the weather changed on me pretty quickly, and most of the leaves are now down, which allowed more road noise to reach the property, but it also beckoned forth many leaf blowers. I also have a neighbor with dogs who bark constantly, and it's 33 degrees outside, so here we are. This rig is all about trade-offs. It's about finding the best option for each component in this context. So none of the components are particularly mind-boggling in performance, but the way they all work together to solve my specific problem is why they made the cut. Working from the bottom up, we have the LeoFoto Ranger LS223CEX tripod. It's not exactly cheap at $150 US, but I really like it, and it feels like it's just good value for that kind of money. It's light and very rigid. It's very adjustable with an integrated bowl leveling system. As a matter of fact, that was the feature that set this tripod apart from the others that I tried. The whole point of this rig is to be nimble and quick. I could have named it Jack. Setting up and leveling the camera using a leveling bowl like this is much quicker than trying to make leg adjustments. It will go from 13 inches high to about 2¼ inches from the ground, and is overall just really well built. It's stable, the adjustment knobs and the locks are solid and feel like the real deal. Speaking of which, I've had tripods in the past that use these twist locks to hold the leg extensions, and I never really liked them. These, however, are really solid. Maybe it's the fact that because of its size, there's less leverage working against them, but I don't know. After using this, I would be much more inclined to give these type of leg locks another look on larger tripods. One feature that I'm on the fence about is this 3/8 inch accessory mount. I was really excited about this option when I was shopping because I thought I'd be able to mount my monitor on the tripod instead of on the camera, maybe reducing the weight up top to take better advantage of the fixed dampening that I have in the head. But the way it was positioned, right where the legs meet the bowl, it kind of limits its use, for me anyway. I can get a friction arm mounted, but making adjustments to whatever is on the other end is awkward. I guess it really depends on what you're mounting. And it's certainly better to have it than not. It might be something that as the setup evolves, I'll find ways to take advantage of. Anyway, I like the tripod a lot. It's easy to transport, it's easy to set up, it's easy to use. I'm a fan. Moving up, we have a really old, like probably 10 to 15 year old Benro S4 video head. It works, but it's probably the weakest link in this setup. It's what I call a pseudo fluid head. It has dampening on the pan and tilt, but unless I'm mistaken, it's pressure resistance and not actual viscous fluid. It's a budget head, and like I said, it gets the job done. The real problem with it is that the resistance is not adjustable, and the bigger and heavier the camera setup, the more resistance I like to have. Getting smooth pans and tilts can be a challenge. A head with adjustable drag would be a better solution. On the S4, I have my Sony a7 III, which is in a small rig full cage that adds mounting points for all manner of goodies. I could actually get away without using the cage since my monitor and mic could be attached to the hot shoe mount, but that mount has lots and lots of little wires and connections in it, and I don't want to take a chance on messing something up in there. The cage is mainly for handheld shooting. It adds weight and it allows for a handle to be mounted on the right-hand side. Plus, it allows me to add a clamp to secure the HDMI cable that is connected to my external monitor. With something like this that is going to be handled a lot, having that clamp protects that output, and it just makes me feel better. On top of the cage, I have my oldest and cheapest 5-inch monitor. This is a Field World or Andy Cine F5. No touch screen here, just 4 buttons on top, which I have mapped to zoom, false color for exposure, rule of thirds grid for framing, and focus peaking. For me, mapping those buttons makes this monitor quicker to use than most of the cheap touchscreen models that I've used. And it seems like the battery life is a lot longer than on those touchscreen models. One exception might be the Atomos Ninja, because its interface is so much cleaner, it would be easier to use. But that's a lot of weight, so I only use it when I need the extra functionality that it has. The F5 is not super bright, which may actually be contributing to that longer battery life. But with the added hood, it's bright enough for my purposes. I send a clean feed to my monitor to maximize the real estate up there, and I use the a7 III's monitor to keep track of all my camera settings. For audio, I'm using the Movo VXR10 Pro. I've made a video about this mic and a couple of videos about the standard VXR10. One problem I've found with the original VXR10 is resonant noise. It seems like when I use those mics on a handheld rig, I get a lot of handling noise. Every move on the cage or handle seems to get picked up. Is this falling off? No, it's on there. It makes a bunch of racket. I'm guessing that the Pro model has better dampening inside the body of the mic, and it makes a big difference. This mic has a super cardioid pickup pattern, which gives you more sound from what's directly in front of the camera, and it helps to reject sound from the sides. If I need to get ambient audio, I have found that a pair of lavalier mics clipped to either side of the monitor hood provide a really good stereo image. I've been using ones that came with my Hollyland Lark 150 and running them through this splitter cable to get them to the left and right channels. It's lightweight, it sounds good, and so far I've noticed no major phase issues. And finally, the lens. After looking at several options, I landed on the Tamron 28-200 f2.8 to 5.6. It's got a really long zoom range, it's quite speedy at the wide end, and it's lightweight and compact. Quick sidebar on the lens, when I was trying different options, all of my rentals were from Aperture Rent. They're not sponsoring this video, they didn't even comp my rentals. But I like to talk about companies that I enjoy working with, and they are always wonderful to work with. Once you're in the system, finding and reserving your gear is it's really simple, and they're just nice people. There are a ton of reviews on YouTube about this lens that cover way more than I care to, and quite a few that compare it to the Sony 24-240, which was the other major contender. The Sony just didn't measure up for my needs. On the plus side, it's got a longer zoom, it's got optical steady shot, but it's bigger, it's more expensive. The image quality in general is not as good, and it's not as fast on the wide end. For these purposes, I was looking for a dedicated lens, one that could just live here all the time. But I have to admit, I have found myself using this lens more and more. I like to use my Tamron 28-75 as an A camera lens for interviews. On the B camera, I either use my Sony 70-200 or one of my Zeiss primes. But I found that using this lens as my B cam lens is really nice. Those other lenses are better in terms of sharpness and contrast, but the differences between them and the 28-75 were always noticeable to me. Using the 28-200 as that second lens gives me better consistency between the two camera angles. I've never really liked variable aperture lenses, but on the wide end, this thing is f2.8. 2.8. Again, this is about trade-offs, and the areas where this lens excels far outweigh any of its shortcomings. 28mm is not super wide, but it's plenty wide for my needs. And on the 200mm end, the reach of this lens allows me to get much more intimate footage of our local wildlife, which on the current project is a big part of helping keeping the footage interesting. Having the Sony APS-C punch-in option makes this lens actually a 320mm equivalent. Another thing I love about this lens is the close focusing ability. I'm able to get those macro-esque tight shots that draw the viewer into your sequence and then immediately go to a wide shot or a medium shot or whatever the situation calls for without having to make a trip to my camera bag or lens locker or a phone call to someone who will loan me the lens that I think I need. Lastly, the image quality is really good. Tamron to me is kind of like the Toyota of lenses. It's solid value and they're well built and well engineered and affordable and all that kind of stuff. And I'd say that if not for trying to solve this specific problem, I doubt this lens would have ever been on my radar. And I think that would have been a shame. So, does it work? Yeah, it does. For ease of transport and quick setup, it's really good. The short tripod means working relatively low to the ground or finding something to set it on. But for my purposes, there are no shortage of rocks and cars and railings and etc. that I can use. The leveling ball in this tripod is smooth and the level on my head is at the back of the camera. So finding my angle, setting up, and getting level usually takes just seconds. Framing up shots with the long-range zoom is really simple, and having a dedicated quick button to get to false color allows me to dial in exposure with much more precision than relying on the camera's meter or the histogram, both of which are largely useless for video. For handheld shooting, I can quickly release the camera cage from the tripod, and the weight on this and the handle distance for me works really well. Even at 200mm, I consistently get usable handheld footage. One thing I found myself doing is actually keeping the tripod attached when shooting handheld. The extra weight below the camera seems to help balance things out a bit. But more than that, I've been able to brace the tripod legs against my body, giving me a lot of stability. I look like an idiot, but I get the shots that I want, so there's that. The whole thing is pretty compact, all things considered. Certainly small enough to not look obtrusive if I'm shooting in public. And if I need to get the size down more, I can lose the tripod, the head, and the monitor. The physical size of this lens is just such a benefit to me on that front. Bottom line, it solved my problem. Having an always ready to go quick rig means that I shoot more footage, which makes me better at shooting footage. And it's allowed me to get shots that I probably would have missed otherwise. It's also kind of changed the way I approach setting up, and it's opened my eyes to some new angles and just generally kind of broadened the way I approach shots. It removed the obstacle that I had to getting the footage I want. And I hope there's been something in this video that helps you to do the same. If you like my content, I hope that you'll consider subscribing, and I thank you so much for watching.